people need to understand that, especially men, that every day you get up and go do anything, there's a battle going on. And there's definitely a battle for the souls of your children.
It's impossible to understand your identity if you don't understand who you belong to, where you come from.
I mean, masculinity is a huge problem, but it has more to do with identity crisis than anything.
Love it.
Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God.
Boom, brother Peter. How you been, man? How's life?
Oh, it's busy, just like with you. I'm sure you're crisis after crisis after crisis. It's like it's good for business, but it sucks.
Yeah, it sucks. Yeah, it's interesting.
Like you want to work yourself out of a job, right? But
yeah,
there's a lot going on.
There really is, man. It's nice when we can show up, at some of these houses and these environments and just bring peace to people, though, and have them be like, thank God you're here and thank you for watching over my stuff. That's a super cool feeling. Showing up in the chaos and trying to bring some order,
Being in the state of Southern California, which I think that's where you guys are operating right now, is
yep.
I grew up in Northern California, different state, but I just couldn't believe the amount. I used to fight fire, believe it or not. I did wildland, in Northern California. I grew up right outside of Yosemite, so fires were normal every year, right?
So,
to kind of see what's going on down there, you're just like, wow. I mean, the unpreparedness and just, I've never seen. Now, my cousins were in Paradise, so they lost their house in the Paradise fire,
which was massive, which was amazing.
Yeah,
like of a fire.
It melted their safe. I mean, they had guns, like antique guns. It melted their safe and their guns and everything. It was so hot.
Wow!
But just to see that, I mean, you'd think that they would have been a little bit more prepared for this one, honestly.
Yeah, you would.
We're being honest.
Unless not being prepared was the plan. Yeah.
Let's go down that rabbit hole and see where it goes.
Yo, man, I'm just saying, like, I'm starting to just think anytime there's a massive natural disaster, we should just go and look if there's a plan for a smart city there. I'm just saying, just look it up. I don't know.
I have to check myself being an Intel guy. You can go down some serious rabbit holes and you just got to be like, all right. Let's just balance it out a little bit, and at least as long as I'm not sticking my head in the sand and ignoring all of it. But sometimes you just look at stuff like you've done stuff in Haiti where you're just like, man, this feels like it's destabilizing on purpose. It's just like, how can you hit rock bottom and then start digging?
That's
essentially what's going on down there. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing all over the world. There's just so much chaos, but I also go back and do a lot of history, historical analysis, predictive analysis.
Yeah.
And looking back through history, I couldn't imagine being alive during World War II and seeing what, Hitler was doing and, how that must have made people feel. Pearl Harbor and the people in the UK getting bombed and all that kind of stuff. And it just spreading around the world. They must have felt, very similar as to how we feel. It just happens, throughout history. Bad things happen. So we'll see if we ever find out what's behind it,
Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
Maybe the next time you're in Davos protecting the elites there, you can eavesdrop. Don't break any NDAs, but
yeah. I mean, I know, that's a whole deep rabbit hole. But I would say it is interesting. Do you have any kind of historical thoughts on where we might be in some of these cycles? Like I've heard people talk about America getting ready to fall and all this. I do think it's super interesting that, like, in some ways, there seems to be a momentum. I would say the only thing I would comment on is like there seems to be, I think because of the onslaught on masculinity, there seems to be like a stouter, younger man that might seem to be choosing like the ways of God and things like that. After kind of being like, I think the one good thing that came out of this last administration is people got to kind of like see what that means and how that works out, like how it actually plays out. And like we're poorer and broker and weaker and more confused now. It's like anti-human. And I think they're kind of like, nah, I don't know if I want to do all the as thou willness, you know?
Well, I have a 16-year-old son, and it's like I
Oh
have an
yeah.
11-year-old, 16-year-old, and he's getting ready to just go in the world. I pulled him out of school this semester. I'm
Yeah.
homeschooling my oldest son.
Yeah.
I never
Wow.
thought I would have to do that. I wanted him to have I knew it was gonna be hard. I knew schools weren't the best, and the way I looked at it was like, oh, he'll just become more resilient. But it wasn't. That's not what was going on there, and it got so bad. I pulled him. He just told me, he's like, hey, nobody here cares about me. I don't want to go to college. I want to be a welder. I want to go into the trades. I'm not learning anything there. And then the last day I picked him up, I had to get his attendance record because I have to make sure he's in school 180 days out of the year. And so I was looking at his school record, and it showed that every single day for the semester he'd skipped classes every single day.
I knew it.
And I looked at it, and I was like, why didn't you guys give him detention or something? I said, why didn't you call me?
Yeah.
Let me know what was going on. And I was like, I would have, lit a fire on him or something. I said,
Yeah.
it's exactly what he was saying. They kept trying to push that he was lazy and that he wasn't doing his work and stuff. Well, he gets a part-time job.
Mm-hmm.
He's working from 4 o'clock till 10 o'clock at Walmart, stocking shelves every night, and then going to school. And nobody's complaining about him at work.
Mm-hmm.
He's working a full. California's weird. South Carolina has no restriction on how many hours a kid can work.
Heck yeah.
So we still believe in, I guess, child labor.
Pumping out some men down there, boy. I tell you what.
But he's working all these hours and doing school, and I could see the difference. And I was like, what is going on in his class, in his school? I remember talking to one of his history teachers, a guy, and he's like, if I were you, his teacher was telling me, he's like, I would just pull him out of school. This place is not conducive to young men learning how to survive in the real world. And so I pulled him out. He's getting A's and B's. He's doing mostly everything online on his own. He's done within 3 hours of when he needs to start school, and then he's going and working. And in his generation, I've seen it with a lot of these younger men. They're just like, we don't want to be like that. We want to, do well in life. He's got a girlfriend. I was worried about this, but he's got a really good girlfriend. She's kind of a country girl. Mm-hmm. And he came to me the other day. He's like, hey, Dad, we're probably going to get married around 19. And I was sitting there, automatically,
is that a fact?
You go, wait a minute. That's a really bad idea. But then God stops me. He's like, really? Is it a bad idea? Or is that the original plan?
Wasn't this always
you settle down, you don't go and try and, spread your seed everywhere and all this other stuff. Yeah. You be a man, you find a woman, you settle down, you raise kids. That was
get to work.
Probably the original plan. And so I looked at him and I was like, okay, hey, that's what you want to do and you're going to do it well, fine, But it's not just my son, it's the kids around him, the younger men around him. I'm noticing the same thing. I think there was a video out there, some guy, he was asking men, he's like, if I told you about a girl, it's really beautiful, very successful, whatever, but she's also a hardcore Christian girl.
Oh yeah,
did you see that? She's gonna wait till marriage and all this other stuff. How would you rank her between 1 and 10? And most of the guys were like 11, 12, 15. And I think, like I said, I think there is a movement because people are seeing the reality of the situation, and that's what I talk a lot about. And it was something that I learned over many years of. I grew up really just with no direction. I'm a Northern California dude, skater dude, punk rocker from the 90s. Mm-hmm. And I didn't join the Army until I was 25. Mm. And so I had 7 years there, well, even more, including my high school years, where I just kind of wandered around and just nothing, right? Didn't have a lot of direction. My dad, God bless him, I love him. We get along fine, but he just wasn't really good at providing direction. He kind of just expected you to figure it out. And the only thing that helped me figure it out was the Army. And it was like, I came from I was a coward. I was just scared of everything. I couldn't make decisions and all this other stuff. And so it was the military that kind of pushed me
out of that.
Right. Out of that. So I came from I was a very 180 degree different person than I am now. And it took a lot of hard lessons to get me to where I'm at. But I do think, like I said, there's a lot of people who don't want to live their lives that way. And I think there is a cycle kind of happening that pushes everybody back. And it's like throughout history, even back biblically, you look at it, it's like we have this country that's been very blessed. Because of the blessing on this country, it has spread globally, over the years. And just like Israel in the Bible, when you start going away from who gave you that blessing in the first place, right? I guarantee there's going to be some kind of consequences. But we did have this men's group, and we were kind of praying about different things, you know, and we were talking about, you know, well, is this country really doomed? What's going to happen? And we got down to the whole thing. It was like, I think it was Abram when he was praying for Lot when he was in Sodom and Gomorrah. He said, well, if I can find 10 good men, right? Will you spare the city? Yeah, I'll spare the city. If I can find
But he couldn't find 10 good men. So then he goes to 5. Right. He's like, well, what about 5, man? What about 5? You know what I'm saying?
I feel like we got more than 5 good men still left in the country. So I'm hoping that, of course, we just get a little course correction here and people really start not only just trying to be, I mean, masculinity is a huge problem, but it has more to do with identity crisis than anything.
Love it.
It's just not knowing who you are in life, not having purpose, direction, not understanding those kinds of things that makes it harder to be masculine, to be a man. If you don't know who you are, right, and you can do what most people do, I can be whatever I want to be, which is total 100% complete bullcrap.
Right.
You know,
absolutely.
Then, and that comes with being, of course, in a very permissive and secure environment, which is because of where we come from in our nation, right? So it's like we've kind of overshot it a little bit. And I think we're kind of getting corrected back on course, but I'm hoping that it doesn't take World War III to get people there. I'm waiting. I mean, I was enlisted, but I was also an officer, so I'm an officer for life. I mean, I could get a letter in the mail, and then I'm thinking about my son too. You know, 16. I don't want my kid to get drafted and have to go fight another war for us to really get back on track here. So I'm hoping that things do change, but at the same time, you know, I go all over the world just like you. I spent a lot of time in Ukraine. I spent, you know, time in the Middle East just like you, in the same countries. I joined the Army 4 months before 9/11. So it was May of 2000.
It was a surprise, as my daughter would say, surprise. Yeah. Wow.
I was like, I told my mom too. I was like, don't worry, Mom. We haven't been to war for 10 years. It'll be fine. I enlisted infantry in the Army. Got sent to the 101st. I was in Afghanistan before my first year was up. So I was at E1 in Afghanistan. But it was like, you know, I don't want my kids to have to go through that kind of stuff, you know, in order to figure it out. It's like, let's try and figure this out. Let's be proactive for once instead of reactive, you know. But I don't know, man. It's like watching all this stuff happen and the pathway we're on. A lot of it does feel deliberate to destabilize. I don't know who's behind that. I'm not going to go into any rabbit holes, but I just know I used to do stabilization operations. I was an intelligence officer. I mean, my job was to learn how to destabilize or stabilize regions. And it just feels like a lot of the things going on, how many different fronts we're dealing with, you know, in Southeast Asia, in the Middle East, you know, in Eastern Europe. And it's now starting kind of to creep more into South and Central America. It just feels like there's a lot going on here. It's either deliberate or spiritual. I mean, that's another option, right?
Still deliberate.
Right. Deliberate, right?
Yeah.
Well, and so it's both, like, yeah. Really. But I do think that it does go back to spiritual for me. I'm not a religious person at all. I don't like religion at all, but I am definitely a Christ follower.
Right.
And that came through a lot of years and years and years of learning. I never had like a conversion moment. I grew up in a church. And I ran away from it as quickly as possible when I
same here, bro. Same here.
But it was like, you know, it took many years for me to figure out what I actually believed. And that's why I wrote the book. It's called Killing the Christian Persona, but I wrote it specifically for my sons. I started writing it. And mostly because I was worried, because I was operating in Haiti a lot, doing kidnap and ransom recovery. Like, man, if it goes bad, and I do things a lot by myself, you know, that's just how it works. Like if it goes bad, my kids don't know anything. They don't know anything about me, you know?
Yeah.
They only know a little bit. They're younger, you know? So I started writing it in like 2021. And then it's funny, you know, Dave Grossman, Colonel Grossman.
Yeah.
He and I talked and he read it and he called me up, and I love Dave because
he's awesome.
Direct.
He did a symposium with us as well.
Yep, he's very direct and honest, and he was very direct and honest when he said, "This sucks. You need to change this. This needs to be better." And then he said, "And you need to publish this." And so I was like, well, it's really just, I want my boys. And he's like, no, you need to publish it. And so, I did. So I did.
All right, Dad.
Yeah. But it was just kind of like, I laid out for my boys and said, this is how long it took me to figure out who I am.
Yeah.
And these are the lessons it took to get me there.
Yeah.
So a lot of what I'm talking about in it is trying to kind of gear it toward their generation. I talk a lot about social media and the influence. I talk a lot about personas, about the flow of information, how that's totally new in our, we don't know. This is something that's never existed before. The access to information, instant access to information is something that's never existed before in history, except for in the past 20 years or so. And I mean, that, like when I was talking about, I went to Afghanistan, we had disposable cameras still, it was like,
dude, me too, bro.
Getting into digital,
Yeah, we were like, I hope I got it. Like, I hope all right, send it. Like, I hope we got the photo, Yeah.
I remember I found out we had a PL when I was a scout, and he pulled me aside one day and said, do push-ups. And I started doing push-ups. I was, enlisted, and usually officers don't get into that, it's NCOs.
Yeah.
But he's like, I sent my disposable camera home to my mom, and we were in Germany getting ready to go to Afghanistan, first group in. And I decided it'd be a good idea. We had a whole platoon lined up on the tarmac, some C7s and stuff in the background and stuff. And I was pretty immature still. I decided to moon the camera while he took a picture with his disposable. Of course, he can't check it right away.
About like all of us,
And then he sent it home, and his mom developed it. And so his mom found the picture, and he's like, you need to do push-ups for a while here. So
go ahead and knock out
push-ups for a while.
Yeah, man. No, I mean, we had multiple occasions of parents developing, and seeing, the guys. Pictures. Yeah, the wrong picture, man. I remember we had a redheaded guy named Stove Top. We call him Stove Top. And he got a hold of someone's camera. And the dad was like, yo, you got a redhead in your platoon. Who's the redhead in your platoon, man? That one stood out. Anyway, man. Good time.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the technology's changed so much, and you have access to this instant information now. And that is it's actually perpetuating some of these crises. It's causing things to go a little bit faster. We have to, every time we, are able to, mitigate a TTP from a bad guy or something like that, all it takes is them a few more weeks to figure out something new to come up with, because bad ideas are being shared, and good ideas too.
Yeah.
But we have access to all this information all the time now. And what it's causing is, especially in the younger generations, especially with social media, and the access to good security that we have, this identity crisis is developing because you can be a persona instead of having an identity, instead of knowing who you are. And you might experience it.
This is a powerful concept. I love it, man.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard to figure out. I didn't know who I was, and I was trying to figure it out for a long time. And coming back from being a surfer, punk rock skater dude to going into the infantry, becoming an NCO within 2.5 years, because everybody thinks it's weird, but I think I was fortunate to go to war right away. I don't think I would have been a good garrison soldier. I probably would have gotten in a lot of trouble and kicked out.
Same here, bro. Same here.
Because I went to war right away. It's like you wake up to the real reality, right?
100%.
And I think there's a pivotal moment where we went and we were on the border of Pakistan. I don't know where. We were in the mountains. We had already done, was it Tora Bora and Operation Anaconda? That was my unit. Same unit Pete Hegseth was in. Okay. So we crossed over. We had about a year crossover. He was in my unit. But we were in the mountains, and I was with this operator dude. I didn't know anything about the military, man. My whole family served, but we didn't talk about it a lot.
Okay.
My dad was a Vietnam vet. My grandfathers were in World War II. My brother's a Marine. He's the one who talked me into the Army, but then he talked his niece and nephew into joining the Marines, by the way. So there's a good mix of healthy competition in the family.
So we can talk crap to each other on the holidays.
Yeah. But, we were in the mountains, and I was with this, he must have been, he was a tier 1 dude, beard, no name tags and everything. And I was attached to him as his RTO, and we were looking for Taliban collaborators. Mm-hmm. And so we detained this one guy. We didn't put flex cuffs on him. He was being cooperative. And this guy's going through his house, essentially. Mm-hmm. And so I remember this guy's wife was freaking out because we were the first Americans there, and all they knew about Americans was we were going to rape and pillage and do all sorts of bad stuff.
Yeah, we're all Satanists and all this.
And so she's freaking out, and her husband asked her, the interpreter, if he can talk to his wife to calm her down.
Yeah.
And I was naive enough, and I said, okay. And he went over to her, and he punched her in the face like a man, busted her nose, blood went everywhere. She went out like a light. I butt stroked him down back on the ground, threw flex cuffs on him, and he's looking at me with this confused look on his face. And and this
I love it. This is the game. It's like, welcome to another planet, buddy.
Right. Different planet.
Totally. He's like, what is your problem? Like, why are you even mad right now? You know?
Right. And and this operator dude's like, hey man, that's just how they do things here. I said, well, it's not how I do, and I'm not going to allow him to do that. But I'd never experienced, I didn't grow up in a really abusive situation or my family or anything. I grew up in the mountains in California, I mean, I'd never experienced violence like that, especially toward a woman.
Yeah.
And I just remember sitting there going, my world doesn't exist. This is the real world.
Yeah, buddy.
People deal with it all the time. Mine is Disneyland and La La Land, and it's a simulation that I cross back over when I come home. We have such good security here and the ability to self-actualize and do all these things, whereas most people don't. And that was this pivotal moment in my life where I was like, okay, things are gonna change here from here on out. And so but it was a lot of questions at that point, I just kind of floated through life. I didn't know who I was, and luckily I stuck with the military and was able to figure a lot of that out through a lot of tough deployments and situations, and then things after that as well. But it was this idea of I don't know who I am. And that was amazing. It doesn't seem like a big, a lot of people are like, oh, you didn't get blown up or you didn't get in a firefight. It's we did some of that later on, but it was this moment that made me realize I really don't know who I am, what kind of person I am. I don't know a lot about the world. I need to learn, and that kind of drove me in my career. It made me go from being enlisted for 8 years. I was a E5 when I crossed over and became an officer. And first I was going to be an infantry officer. And I was like, man, I really want to learn more about this stuff and do something with it afterwards. So I decided to go intel instead. It was a good mix of, I was a scout. I was in scout platoon and I did infantry. And then I got to go do intel. After collecting the intel, got to go find out what they do with it. Yeah. Which is a whole different thing, but
a whole different kind of party.
I just realized there's so much more out there, and it's how do I find out who I am? And I realized the only way I was going to do that is by pushing myself into some situations. And I think that's one of the things missing when you're talking about masculinity, especially. People want to do things. They fantasize about it. They watch movies about it. They go skydiving with a lot of safety measures in place and things like that. Whereas, if we lived in the old West, man, I mean, your kid, my 11-year-old would be riding in the buckboard next to me with a shotgun out. Yeah. My 16-year-old would be riding as a scout ahead of me as we're going into town to get groceries. And it wouldn't be traumatic and it wouldn't trigger them. It would just be life. And that's just how life is. I remember talking to my men's group the other day. I said, we were talking and they're like, well, Pete, not everybody can do what you do. What can we do that's practical as men, in our I said, why couldn't you do what I do? Yeah. I'm not anything special, man. I wasn't an operator or anything maybe a typical 1940s man, right? Who maybe went through some of the depression time, got a little bit of resilience and stuff like that, but I'm not anything special. It's just because you guys are scared. Yep. And that's the bottom line. You don't understand.
Get them.
Fear and cowardice. Those things are choices. And same with courage. It's a choice. It's not something you are or not. Right. It's a choice you make, and you need to choose to do that. But it doesn't mean you could do that. And so that's what the problem is. We have whole generations of men who've never been tested. Their metal's never been tested. So they have no clue who they are. Yep. They think they're something, but when they're actually confronted, what happens when a crisis hits you? Fight, flight, or freeze, and you never rise to the occasion. You always go to your base self.
Your training,
right? But
like your base training, not your best rep. I'm talking about your crappiest rep.
You're not going to rise to the occasion, people. Just let you know, unless you test yourself. Yeah, and that's why I got to test myself in order to figure out who I am. And so I asked God to help me with that. I wasn't really following that much during that time. I was like, okay, first off, I want to know who you are. Without, if I could like a lot of my Muslim friends that converted to Christianity, they didn't have like our conversion. We're going to church, a lot, and we're learning about the stuff. It's like they have a vision or a dream where some dude shows up and says, "Hey, you're going to meet this guy at this time, and he's going to tell you about Isa or Jesus." And it's like, and so they have a lot of them have this, like where they have these visions or dreams where they're going to go meet somebody, and that's how their conversion happens.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, you're on this run about identity, finding your identity, massive. It's something that I always talk about. I'm always telling these guys, like, you don't know who you are because you don't know whose you are. It's impossible to understand your identity if you don't understand who you belong to, where you come from, and you don't have a foundation,
Right.
and something to fall back on. Like I've been punched in the face and blown up and all the things so many times, and or even in every level, there's a new challenge that gets you to your core. Like in this last level as an entrepreneur, it was like financial difficulties and this adult business problems, and it was like, I don't know how to fight these. And every time you go back to the Father and you're like, all right, like, how are we going to win at this one? And he's always faithful. But this is, I haven't even had to say anything because you're just
Sorry.
no, you're going there, man. You're hitting all the targets, like, and you're just zipping them up. Like I'll have a question and then you're already answering it. So finding your identity as a man in Christ, what does that sound like?
It's a moving target.
Heck yeah, bro. It's a
If you
journey, not a destination.
right,
Let's
and
go.
the goal ultimately is to be like Christ, right?
Yeah.
Which means perfect, which is pretty lofty
Yep.
to reach.
And he says,
so,
be perfect too. He says, he
be
tells
as I
you.
am.
Yeah, 100%. Let's go.
But I think with that, it's like I said, it's a moving target. If your goal is to be like him, then you're constantly going to be looking to improve. And if your identity is in him, if you want your identity to be in Christ, that means you have to attain to be like Christ.
Yeah.
So that means it's constantly going to be changing, which is okay. It's like you're as long as you're reaching for that goal and you're listening and being obedient when he tells you to do something, then you'll get closer and closer and closer and closer. And then by the end, we'll figure it out, I think. But it's the journey, right? Not the destination.
Yeah, 100%.
To a certain extent. But it's like, for me, it was just like you said, there was layers, hey, I thought I figured it out in the military, right?
Yeah.
I did a lot. I had no college education when I joined. I used the GI Bill, got a couple degrees. I remember I had some really good mentors along the way, and I think God put them there for a reason that encouraged me because I never had that in my life. I didn't have encouragement. I didn't have anybody saying, "Hey, go do these things. You can achieve this. You can achieve greatness or whatever, or you could be better running a company, becoming an officer in the military." None of that was planned. None of my life was planned. Let me put it that way. I was joining the Army out of desperation because I didn't have anything else that I could do. And I looked in the mirror one day and saw a mohawk that was up to here and was just like, man,
I got to figure some stuff out.
I need some life goals here. But having some good people along the way who encouraged me. I remember one officer, he said to me one day, I was like 3 years into my career. So I was like E4, maybe, or E5. No, I was E5. I was just taking on a team, of guys. And he pulled me up in front of the group one day. He said, they gave me an award for something. I can't remember what happened, but he said, "This guy is the smartest NCO I've ever met." And I was like sitting here, I was like, nobody's ever called me smart before in my life.
Yeah.
Because in school, I did not do good. My mom homeschooled me my last couple of years. That's the only way I got through high school.
So that was a generational, that thing stayed in the generation right there.
Yeah. I should have picked up on it earlier with my son. I thought things would get better by 20 years later, but I guess they haven't.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so I mean, somebody called me smart, and then this same person encouraged me. He's like, "You should go to OCS." Just put the idea in my head. I was like, "What do you mean? I mean, I'm not an officer, Well, doing 8 years and then going through a bunch of different things and having things just put my path. I went to school. I was on the dean's list the entire time. No medication. Nobody helped me with my ADHD or anything else. Just using good old discipline, exercise, things like that. To overcome and sticking with it. I was on the dean's list, got 2 degrees. I was on the dean's list the whole time. Got a degree in criminal justice and then one in business.
Heck yeah.
and then went to
Master.
OCS. And so at first I was like, oh, my identity's in the military now. This is who I am, right?
Yep.
I'm Army.
Yep.
I'm all Army. I'm good at it. I'm going to stick with it. I've survived a couple of war zones. This is where I'm at. This is me. Anybody
how it
ask me what I
starts.
am? I'm a soldier, right?
Yeah.
When I joined, I was 175 at 6'2", just a beanpole, right?
Yeah.
I'm
And then
4 years in, I'm like 225.
225. Yep. I know the type, bro. Let's
It's like,
go.
so I'm feeling good about myself, you know. My wife and I are starting to date. She's super hot, you know, and
Yeah.
beautiful woman, and totally the exact opposite of me, thank God. But just a girly girl, which is perfectly fine by me.
What you want, yeah.
Right. But all this stuff's happening, and then I go through OCS, make it through that with honors.
Heck yeah. Jeez,
you
man.
know, and become an officer, an intel officer, and getting a chance to really lead. And I remember that my identity turned into that. You know, driving, making good money, buying nicer cars, buying a nicer house. I don't have any debt, that kind of stuff. And then the rug got pulled out from underneath me because I still wasn't figuring out. I was starting to work on my walk with God and figure that out too at the same time. I was going to church and stuff and doing, you know, things here and there. But about I was a captain at the time, and we were on our second pregnancy. My wife was full term, just waiting for the day. I'd gotten off active duty, gone into the guard, but I was contracting. I was doing contracting at the time, and so she called me up, said, "Hey, something's wrong. Not feeling the baby." So I haul ass. I was working at Fort Huachuca at the time. Haul ass up to Tucson where she was. Throw her in the car, go to the hospital with my oldest son, who was 4 at the time, and her. And we just moved there too. We didn't know anybody, so it was kind of like,
you're on your
get
own.
to the hospital. I had to drop her off. She walks in. I go park the car, run in, go into the room. She's bawling. My son's looking at me scared, and the nurse is like, "Hey, I'm sorry. There's nothing. Your child is passed." So he was full term, and then my wife has to go through 8 hours of labor too, still deliver the baby, you know, after knowing that he's been passed. In my mind, I'm like, hey, cut her open, man. Start doing CPR.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's not how it works, you know?
Jeez.
And so it was just like, all of a sudden, you know, we went through all this whole situation. So for like the next 3 weeks, I was just pissed at God. I was like, you don't exist if this is the way it is. There's no reason. This kid never even had a chance to sin.
Yeah.
Why did he die? You know? And I just went right back to, I don't know who the heck I am again. You know, everything I thought I was capable of everything. I could protect my family. I could take care of us. I didn't need anybody's help at the time. I felt very self-reliant. Nobody's ever given me anything. Nobody put me through school. Nobody's given me loans for business or any of that stuff. So I felt like I was the one doing everything. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, like that, you got no control. You can't protect your own child.
Yep.
You know, from this. And so I went back to not knowing who I was. And then having to understand a little bit better, I think, of spiritual warfare, and that there is war predates us. There was war going on before we ever existed.
100%.
And people need to understand that, especially men, that every day you get up and go do anything, there's a battle going on. And there's definitely a battle for the souls of your children.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm sitting here blaming God. And I remember people coming up to me like, oh, well, you know, God's got a plan and it's his will. And I was sitting there and I was accepting it. I was like, okay. It's like, if that's your will, I don't want nothing to do with you, you know?
Yeah, exactly. These little Christian mantras they say just to make themselves feel better.
Yep. They don't know what to say. But I remember this one girl, I hadn't talked to her for a while. She was the girl I grew up with, was a good Christian woman, and called me out of the blue and said, hey, I got something for you. God told me to tell you this. Said, he didn't kill your kid. There's only one entity out there that wants to kill, steal, and destroy.
Yep.
And it's not God. God's original plan for us was to have life and life more abundantly. Right? We chose to sin and go down that path, and now we have to deal with the wages of it, which is death. And death happens. But God didn't kill your kid.
Right.
The enemy doesn't want you to raise strong young men like you to carry on the legacy, you know, into the future. He wants to crush that, even if it means within the womb, which happens a lot nowadays. We don't want to go down that road too far, but I mean, it's the truth. You know, there's a lot of infanticide and death and kids being exploited and all sorts of stuff. He goes after our kids. And so when she said that, it kind of gave me some peace about some things. And I kind of asked God, I was like, I'm trying to figure out who I am and everything else, but I think I need to understand the battle a little bit more here in order to do that. What is this war about?
Right.
I never really totally acknowledged that there was an enemy. There's good and there's evil, right? And so I started diving into that a little bit and trying to understand who this enemy is. And then I got another word from God. It's like, look, I've given you all this tactical and strategic knowledge on how to fight war. How to, as an intel guy, my job is to mitigate risk and prevent and advise commanders and things like that so that they're not walking into the battle blindly. He's like, do you think I put you through all that and gave you all that information just so you could just roll over and, die when the first attack comes?
Right.
It's like, you need to start looking at life a little bit more like that. And so, so I started diving into why does he exist and why is Satan here? What's his job here? It's like, why is there good and evil? Why did God allow the devil to be on the same planet that he created us
here.
on? What's the point?
Why does he release him after 1,000 years and the end of the dang story again? You know what I mean? Like, there's it's some real interesting question. But also the other thing I want to point out is like, it's funny how fragile our little identities are, bro. Yeah, I mean, like we swear up and down we're so hard. Like, I was military, I did this, I did that, I built this, I built that, I built this, and then just in one fair swoop, like it's just, and you're just, and you're,
it's like, oh crap, I can't do anything. I'm not in control of anything.
And you're just back on your knees, man, dude. It's the healthiest thing for you. It's pretty amazing.
Well, and it's either you become a victim or you
become victorious.
And I remember I used to preach at my guys all the time. You're not a victim. You're not a victim. Blah blah blah. And then all of a sudden, this happens to me, and I'm the victim, crying about it, blaming God, blaming everybody else. Act of this thing that happened, and it happens all the time. That same night in the hospital, there's 3 stillbirths. There's 3 kids, all in the same night. And they said it happens. They said I was lucky because my child was full term. I actually got to hold him and see him and say goodbye. A lot of people, they don't get that chance. So it was about that. It was like understanding, look, you have choices to make. If you didn't have evil, if there wasn't death, if there wasn't children dying, things like that, you wouldn't understand what good is, what the pure things of God were. There would be no choice. If we lived in utopia, of course, we're going to be happy there. That's what Adam and Eve, the only reason that tree of the knowledge of good and evil stood in the middle of that perfect garden on a perfect planet with everything they needed was to give them the choice to decide whether or not they're going to choose to love God or go down the other road. And within the first generation, they made a bad choice.
100%.
And so,
and that gift of choice, it is the greatest gift of love in existence, and that I mean, the alternative is making us into robots, and there would be no value in putting us in a place to learn character and become like him, so we can rule with him. Ultimately, I believe. So it's the whole, it all comes down to that option. And then the other part of it, the way that I kind of approach that is he's the alpha and he's the omega, like he starts the equation from the end. Like I think quantum physics kind of, some quantum physicists took a swing at it, and it was pretty interesting to me to hear the way he explained it. He's like, God, he's like, the best I can tell based on what I see in the Bible is he's like a 7-dimensional being. Like
omnipresent.
Yeah, man. Like he sees you and you see you, but you're like on this timeline and you're like, Jesus, what's going to happen? Oh my gosh. And he
already knows.
He's seen like the whole thing, like your whole life, we're down here. He's like, nah, man, like it's all good, dude. Like, this is literally, I'm looking at the whole thing, and I chose you before the foundation of the world, like of the planet. It's like he's not in time, like he's outside of it, looking at the whole thing, and it's gnarly.
You say that to people all the time, man. It's so good that you were. That's exactly the thing I was going to say next. So we're obviously on the same.
Dude, 100%, same spirit.
Well, and it's like. Well, that was the other thing. I look. It's like, okay, he sees everything all at once, and then it was okay. Let's start thinking about what happens after death.
Right.
Because you question that. My wife was going on the same path. She was a new believer at the time that happened. And I just remember thinking, my son actually got to experience life the way it was always meant to be. He was brought into existence and went straight into the arms of Jesus. Like that's exactly how we were supposed to be living in the first place.
Yeah.
We'll see him again someday. That doesn't bother me. I've been able to talk to a lot of people about this too, but it did solidify a few things in my life to where I was just another step closer to figuring out, okay, I can't put all my eggs in one basket thinking that my identity is attached to anything in this world. And it's the same thing a lot of vets go through. It's like you get out of the military. That's why we have everybody thinks that the massive amounts of suicide we have has to do something with combat. I can tell you I saw some pretty crappy things in combat, and I don't lose sleep over it ever. It's like bad guys decided to pick up guns and shoot at people and they got shot or blown up. Sorry, that's what happens. You live by the sword, you die by the sword.
Right.
I've never felt bad about anything I saw in combat. I've never had bad dreams about it. I think what guys have a hard, and a lot of men I've talked to and women who are veterans, same thing. What they lose when they get out of the military and why a lot of them are killing themselves after they get out, not while they're in. A lot of them are committing suicide after they get out. That's why veteran suicide is high.
Right.
And it's because they have put their identity in this thing.
Yeah.
That gave them real purpose and direction.
Yeah,
right?
I wrote a whole book about it, finding meaning after the military, and it is exactly what you're talking about. And now when you get out, you need to find your new fight, and you need to build that. You need to get focused on actually leaning into this new battlefield, and that's what a lot of guys don't do. There's so much to that. The atrophy of identity, I think, is what kills people. It's just that rotting away of what you used to be and who you used to be. That you die long before you end up, eating your 9 mil.
Yep.
And that's a wrap.
And there's a step beyond that. Like that helped me a little bit when I got out. It's like I found a new mission pretty quickly with my company and doing some of the good things that we very similarly do around the world, and it's like that was good, but there was a step further that I needed to take. And I'm still working. Even when I was writing the book, I was working it out. And it's so funny when you write something like that, be prepared for the crap to hit the fan.
Oh yeah, it's going to be challenged. It's going to be challenged, man.
You wrote all this stuff. Let's see if you could live it now. But it was like the biggest thing I got out of that was, look, you need to be okay with your identity being in me, which means obedience to whatever I tell you to do. If I want you to be a janitor at the church, you better pour your whole heart into that and do it, which also means your ego needs to be squashed 100%.
100%.
Your ego does not exist here anymore. You don't do anything for ego because it's just going to get you in trouble or other people in trouble. Yes. And you understand that whatever I called you to do, you need to be obedient to, and that's just one step closer to your identity in Christ. One of the greatest examples of that is author Oswald Chambers. He wrote My Utmost for His Highest. It's one of the most well-read books in Christianity, and he wrote it hundreds of years ago. He actually didn't write the book, but it's the most well-read book out there. If you look up Oswald Chambers, you'll see some quotes and stuff from it. You'll know who he is. His wife wrote the book. All he did was go out and preach, and he died pretty young. He died from, I think it was appendicitis. His appendix burst. He died pretty young, but his wife would sit in the back when he was preaching, and they did stuff. It wasn't hundreds. It was during World War I. He was preaching to, as a chaplain and different things like that. But his words were so impactful. She wrote them down, and then she wrote the book after he died. So he didn't say anything that he thought was going to be written down and recorded and that he was going to get recognition for or anything like that. But it's still one of the most well-read books in all Christianity.
Wow.
And it even goes back to the heroes of faith that we see in the Bible. Paul didn't know that the Bible was going to be massed into this big book that's going to be read for 2,000 years, or that he was going to have one of the greatest impacts on the Christian church.
Right.
He just did what God told him to do. He was just a dude. If anything, he was probably more like us. I always think about Paul when he was Saul, infiltrating Christian organizations, and,
swacking on
them. Yeah. It's like, that's the guy Christ is going to pick. But and the funny thing is, he's one of the only guys in the New Testament that didn't really have a choice. It's like, you have a choice. You can be blind or you can do what I tell you to do.
No, man, I think that's how it is, bro. Like, I don't know, man. Like, with my calling, it's like sometimes I'm like, you guys think you got a choice. Like, I don't know, man. Like for me, it was literally like Byron's way: death, jail, complete loser. And it was like God's way. Maybe something amazing can happen. But of course, lots of death of ego, death of who you are, death, a billion deaths of all these things that need to get, you know what I'm saying? But then you come out the other side, awesome, you know,
Yep.
and closer to his image by the grace of God.
Well, and then, like I said, ego was
Ego,
the
that
next
was it.
step. Yeah, it was the next step, and it was something. It wasn't just about me and my identity in Christ, but it was also about how well I can do what He called me to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, my ego needed to be killed, and I couldn't be doing anything because I was doing it for recognition anymore. A
Exactly.
lot of what I did, especially in the military, was for attaboys, pats on the back from people I respected.
Or to prove to myself, to prove to me I could do it. You know, a lot of it for me
Yeah.
was like, how can I prove I'm a man to myself? You know, that was a
Well, and
lot.
then, but if you look, and even look, I idolize people too. That's what part of what I'm trying to teach my boys through this book is, look, you're going to meet a lot of gurus
Mhm.
and personas throughout your life, especially if you're on the internet and social media. And you're probably going to know this better than anybody, doing what you do. You're going to meet a lot of gurus who tell you that they have it all figured out.
Yep.
And their ability to thrive and survive online is based off affirmation from clicks and likes and things like that.
Yeah.
So, but you don't really know who that person is. All
Really
you know
is.
is what they're showing you, which I used to do as an Intel guy all the time, right? Create a persona.
Yeah.
You're not going to know who they are. And that the other thing you need to understand is that there are no perfect men and women out there. Everybody is fallible. Everybody's
Yep.
fallen short. Everybody is. I always feel bad for leaders who are like propped up on a pedestal, like some of these church leaders, especially. Everybody's in the church and they're following this person, and all of a sudden, a person gets caught in a sin or something like that.
And everyone's like, I can't believe.
And then it splits the entire church. It's like,
they're like, stone him. I'm like, bro, you can't even not eat the cookie late at night, home. Right. You're still in your like, what are you talking about? Like, are you not human?
And the fact that you put so much pressure on those people, and it's like, so part of killing the ego was not doing things for affirmation from other men. I even got to the point where I realized I actually don't trust people, and everybody's like, "Oh, that's a horrible way to live." It's like,
they're humans. They're people.
They're human people. They're going to make mistakes no matter what. Humans are going to make mistakes. Now, I trust Christ in a person, and that Christ has put that person on my path for a reason. But I try to use discernment and listen to the Holy Spirit when it's telling me, "Hey, there's something off here, maybe," and I don't put enough faith in that person to where if they screw up, I'm like, "You're a horrible person, and I'm the victim because you didn't
and I'm heartbroken.
My unrealistic expectation." Right?
I have a saying: disappointment comes from disappointing your expectations. You know what I'm saying? You got disappointed because you didn't read the tea leaves and understand who you're dealing with. If I got a 4-year-old, I expect to act like a 4-year-old. I ain't gonna be disappointed, But I love it, man.
When that crosses over into business really well.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like once I decided to stop putting my faith in other people, just put it in Christ.
Yeah.
Once I decided to stop doing things to be affirmed by other people, that the only person that I'm going to stand in front of at the end is Christ. And there's not going to be anybody standing there holding my hand with me. No leaders can be standing next to me going, "Oh, Pete did a good job, Jesus. You should let him into your kingdom." It's just going to be me and him.
Yep.
And what terrifies me the most is there's that scripture where he says there's many, what does it say? Many are going to, say to me in that day, "Lord, Lord, do we not prophesy in your name?"
It's like the scariest verse. Scariest verse in the Bible, bro.
Well, he's gonna be like, "Depart from me, I don't know you." The thing is, those people who are saying that to him actually believe that they've followed him their entire life, but they weren't. It's like, oh God, that could be me. I'm not naive enough to think that couldn't be me. If I could think that I'm doing all these things right and going all over the world and rescuing kids and helping orphans, widows, and all this other stuff, and still end up standing in front of him and going, "I don't know you," So it's like I started living my life for, okay, God, what do you want me to do? And definitely fall short on a consistent basis. I'm not perfect, but I keep getting the closer and closer I get to him and just falling into his will. It doesn't get easier. It's more rewarding and fulfilling, but it's not necessarily easier. I think people expect the prosperity doctrine.
No, I love this that you're saying this, bro, because I'm right there with you. It doesn't get easy. In fact,
Doesn't get easier.
It's like he wants bigger pieces of you. You're like, man, I really worked on this arm, and he's like, this arm is it takes more pieces of you. But like the more you trust him, the better you get at like giving up these pieces and dealing with things because you have struggle credentials. So it's like the last barrage of combat, spiritual warfare and combat and challenge and struggle I saw, like for the first like 3/4 of the football game, I was like, man, we've been here before, and then like the Loch Ness monster shows up and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be good. I'm like, because I know my father's gonna get me, like I mean, like he's gonna get my back. And I remember I was like, man, this is gonna be good. I'm like, when God delivers me from this, it's gonna be amazing. And I like had the stamina and the faith to not breeze through it, but to like really hold up like the first 3/4. And then that last quarter, it was almost like this ain't costing you enough, buddy. It was like, now we're finna get the rest of it. We're going deep. And that last quarter, man, I was like, Father, I'm tired. I'm tired of needing to use my faith so much. Like, can we just be done? He's like, we'll be done.
Take a break
when we're done, buddy. And it perfects you, man. But it's like more of you has to go. And then, I think that is the greatest gift I've been given in my life is these adversities, because these are the very things that make my faith in him unshakable and bring me closer to him and show me different sides of him that you just can't get. You just don't get out there in Nerf land. You
gotta, you're gonna purge. He's gonna purge whatever he can from you. And like I said, it's a moving target, so it's a consistent thing until it's like you rest when you die.
100%, man. And you're going deeper. A lot of people think
peace on earth, right? We want peace. And you're talking about the man of peace. And I keep telling everybody, like, what is your definition of peace?
Yeah.
And how do you achieve it? And I want you to go back historically and think about how peace has ever in history been achieved. It only comes through conflict. And it's always, 100%. It's not, there's never been a time where everybody's threw down weapons, went kumbaya, we're good. It was conflict, a fight, a war. Something had to happen first in order to achieve peace for a time.
Yeah.
So
it's when good people are dominant, because when bad people are dominant and they lose, when bad people win wars, then what happens afterwards is not peace. Peace only exists when good people won the war and for the amount of time they have dominance.
Yeah, and you have to get there in your own life. It's being able to pivot, being agile. That happens as you get closer and closer into his will, because his will is perfect.
Yeah.
Right. Like you said, he sees everything. There's no time and space. Right. It's just omni. I know what decisions you're going to make. I know which direction you need to go. The more you pull away from me, the more I have to move things around to get you back over here, and the harder it's going to be. And then the other piece of it is, everybody says, "Oh, he's never going to give you more than you can handle." I said, "Yeah, but how much can you handle?" And that's
you don't have exactly. Yeah, you don't have any idea how much you can handle, dog. Even in boot camp, I remember. It's like, golly, man. Even in the Marine Corps, it's like, well, you don't know what you're capable of. They're about to bring it out of you, and that, my friends, is a process. That's a painful. It's quite a process, buddy.
But once you get through that, though, once you get through some of that, and for me, it was.
It's good. That's stuff.
I started seeing things differently, especially even in work, in what we do. I started coming across a lot of guys in their. Okay, Haiti's a good example. We had a mission in Haiti. I had to evacuate. It was like 250 kids, and I just remember like a lot of my partners I was talking with. It's like, we need to get down there and do this, and I was like, do we really though? Why? Why do we need to go down there? So I have a network down there. I have a team down there right now. I can do this from my office with my phone.
Yeah,
you don't have to. Well, what about maybe we can use it to get some pictures and things like that. And I was like, are you serious? You want to go risk your life to get advertising pictures? You want to do
it's not a game.
You want to get your rocks off and feel relevant again. And so that's ego. Once again, let's push ego aside and just think about how this needs to happen. We were able to do it. We got the government to pay for it. It didn't cost anybody extra. All the kids are safe. It's the way God's changed my thinking on this by pushing out ego has actually helped me in business to do things more effectively, efficiently, and safer. And even within our industry, that's one of the biggest challenges I find, especially when I'm hiring people or when I'm using them to do details and things like that, or even to do some of the other stuff we do. The hardest thing I have is like when a guy comes in and I ask him why they do what they do. And even at our last at IPSB, somebody got up there and said, "I'm really ego driven." I said, "That's not a good place to be. When you're ego driven, that means you're self-centered and you're not thinking about your partners and the people you're working with as much as you should. You have to start thinking about them. If you do that, you'll actually be more prosperous in the long run and you'll last longer. You ever notice that a lot of these groups, they pop up real quick and they're gone, right? They don't have longevity, especially in security protectors. And it's because their motivation, they haven't figured out how to take what they had in the military where you're serving something bigger outside other than yourself, or in law enforcement where you're serving the public, right? Military, you're serving if you're not serving the general civilians in the United States, you're at least serving your fellow
brothers,
platoon members, your brothers and sisters in arms. They're having a hard time finding out how to find that again.
Yep.
Want to get the feeling back. They think that feeling actually lies in going and kicking down doors and
doing cool guy stuff. Yeah,
it doesn't. And it doesn't. It never works out for them. And because the motivation is wrong, when they go do that stuff, usually something bad happens in the long run. Somebody gets compromised. They're taking pictures of the people they're working with and post them online, trying to raise money, whatever it is. It ends up destroying their credibility, and then they're done. And so God's taken a lot of like, hey, you don't need recognition from anyone in this world other than me. That's it. Even when it comes to, having to build your company or grow your company and advertise, I've never once had to put somebody's logo on my website saying I work with them. And I've been in business for 12 years. I've never once told anybody I work with who I work for.
Same here, man.
Maintain confidentiality.
Right.
And because in doing that over the long term, you just grow and you become the person that people do want to go to because you don't discuss client information. Was that on accountant Ben Affleck?
Yeah. No, but it's the truth, business. Man. The name dropping. It's 100% the truth, man. And that's how this industry is very interesting for flushing out the ego, because you're going to be in some big places, in some private jets and doing some things. And if you're vulnerable to that, it'll be exploited. Like you're going to be the man, private backstage. You get to tell people who comes back, who don't. And if you're vulnerable to that, it'll jam you up, And then like you were saying earlier with the identity thing too, like the imposter syndrome that a lot of like influencer people struggle with, or even guys in our industry struggle with. And it's like, dude, your foundation has to be grounded. With me, the one thing I swear I'm so glad I did from the beginning was I was like, this brand's not about me being perfect. This brand's about me being just a dude who's doing his best, who's a student, who's going to try his hardest. I made my first video of me at a shooting competition, and everyone in my squad was like, bro, you suck. Like, what are you doing? And I was like, I know. I was like, but I'm gonna post it. I was like, because this is
3 years later, do the same thing. You're probably a lot better, and then you can show that,
man.
People know that you're authentic at that point.
Yeah, man. And they were like, they didn't get it. Yeah, they didn't get it. And I was like, well, you're gonna present a perfect, like you're gonna tell the world you're perfect. You're gonna have a lot to freaking hide, bro. You can't rob a naked man, And so that's why it's amazing to be genuine. And the other thing I would say is any piece of your identity that you find outside of the Heavenly Father, outside of Christ, will be shaken. So whether it's like your wife or your job or something you created with the work of your hands, like homie, you better make sure it ain't an idol, bro, because you're gonna challenge it, and it's gonna go wash away, and you're gonna be confronted with the reality that like, man, I should have just kept my eyes on him. And what we do is we go through these struggles. We cry out for more. Father, help me, please, help me, please. He shows up. He rescues us. All of a sudden, we get to the promised land that he rescued us to, and then we go ahead and make idols out of all the stuff that he gives us because he's blessing us because we finally got ourselves together while we were in the belly of the beast. You know what I'm saying? So. And that's kind of the human cycle most people kind of go on. And so now for me, man, now that I'm back in the promised land thing, we made it through this last desert, which you're just going to go through in life. Like If you're not going through these cycles of pruning,
you're not growing. Yeah.
you're literally just not growing. Satan has no idea who you are. Like you might not even be like you really need to figure out how you can get on that path. Right. So my prayer now is just, Father, like help me to be as hungry for you and as serious and not casual and pressing into you the same way I was pressing in when we were in the middle of the desert and I needed 70K by Monday and we needed to solve this problem by freaking payrolls coming up. Like when you need Jesus, when you're fasting, what I'm saying? Not because it's the first of the year with your church, because you need to get his attention. Hey, you know what I'm saying? This is what I'm talking about. Like that kind of hunger, because dudes like us, we neglect this discipline. We think just because we're jacked and tan and capable, like we've done, like this is, you're a three-part being. This is one quadrant of responsibility to develop you have, and so like these spiritual disciplines, in my opinion, like this is when you really start to develop into becoming a real man, is when you start developing these things and you see the whole world differently and you move differently. Anyways, I just wanted to add that. I love it, man. This is good stuff.
Well, and then, I mean, if I can leave one thing out there, the most important thing that I learned was when we receive Christ, this for Christians specifically, when you receive Christ, why doesn't he just take you straight to heaven? Why are you left languishing on this crappy rock dealing with all this nonsense?
Why is it like when the work starts? Like that's when we get started.
There's only literally one reason for us to be. There's three reasons combined into one. But it's love God, love people, and then the Great Commission, telling others about him. That's the only reason we're here. God can't just show up all the time divinely. If he did, then people, of course, would believe him. It wouldn't be a hard choice, though, right? God showing up like he did with Paul. That was an easy choice, I'm pretty sure, for Paul at that point. He saw Jesus, and Jesus said, hey, you're going to do this. But for the rest of us, the job is left to us to spread love. Like I said, this goes in that order: love God first, love people second, and then Great Commission. In none of those things are you a factor. And actually, we're all quite replaceable, just like in the military. It's like, you don't want to do your job that he's called you to do? Fine. See you later. I'm going to give it to this guy here who's more responsible. It's like, so our job is to do that, which means ego needs to be pushed aside. Everything we do, including our jobs that we do, it needs to be to his glory. And so that's like, I would never have come on and talked about this 10 years ago. I would never have said anything. I was like, oh, I'm going to hurt my business.
Same here, bro.
And it's like,
this is the result of a process that we've both gone through. Go ahead.
It takes time to get to that point, though. But if you don't do it, you will answer for it in the end.
Yeah.
And only you will be up there. And it's like, I think about how many people I didn't tell about him, throughout my lifetime when I did know, or I was too concerned about what they would think about me, or embarrassed, or whatever it was, whatever the reason was. I could go and kick down Saddam Hussein's door, but I can't do that. Really? Yeah. Why? What's going on here?
Right.
And it's like, once I started putting him first and realizing that there is a mission here that we're called to. Right. We all have a specific piece of that mission, but it's the same mission. And that's to tell others, to spread the love of God to others so they can find him and join us, right, in the kingdom. And so once you get that down, it makes your identity pretty clear at that point. You're still going to be trying to achieve, that perfection in Christ,
right?
Which may be difficult until you get to the end, right? But you're still working to achieve that. Yeah. But it's clear who you are and what you're called to do. It's a very simple mission. It's those three things.
And there's no one else as a man for you to be accountable to, in my opinion. Right. Like, and this is just my opinion. Like, no one keeps the rails on. No one stops me from being the other Byron. Like my wife kind of like, nah, but not really. Like the only people on the planet, like my kids are the best probable thing that keeps me this nice Byron. But realistically, I'm only answerable to God. Like he has his values, that relationship, that into him being there for me and guiding me through life. That's what keeps the rails on. And I also want you guys to understand this whole, understanding, love God, love people, love God, do the things, do the will of the Father, all of this. It could sound, if you've been in church, like kind of boring and like, Well, geez, man, like for reals. And this was one of the biggest problems I had for when God was like, "Hey, bro, you need to like, I didn't keep you alive and bring you back from Iraq for this, what you're doing." And he was like, "You need to get serious about the things that matter, so the things that matter get serious about you." And I remember being like, "Bro, I can't do that." I was like, "Father, I can't just one wife for the rest of my life and what am I go to church with these skinny jean guys and just like sing freaking kumbaya?" Like I'm already struggling with the fact that like reality is boring. Like I want to do party drugs because combat was the only place I felt like I could be me in a way. You know what I mean? Like this sucks. Nerf. I was like so upset. And I was like, I don't know if I could be this nice guy that I think you want me to be because of what I've seen demonstrated. And he was like, "Don't ever judge me based on other people."
Yeah.
Like he was like, and I remember being like, "Okay." And then I was like, "Well, then you're going to have to be God because I think I'm going to be bored to death and I'm going to kill myself trying to do this." And what happened? This has been the most exciting, powerful, unfathomable journey. I could have never ever imagined the things that we've done together, like the mission, that we've gone on, getting knighted, and becoming a knight of Malta, like just the adventures being flown around the world, like the honor, having honor, just arriving somehow as a 39-year-old man and still having honor and having been in the public eye, posting on social media, like there's so many things about my life that at any moment could have blown up at any point in time by now. Like, so I just want you guys to know that this can sound simple, and it is, but God's going to take you on a journey that was designed for you and on an adventure that was designed for you that is far greater than anything you could have asked or thunk. As you get to know him, you'll have more faith in him, and you'll actually get the balls to go where he tells you. And then the freaking game begins, man. And you'll see it all in the Bible if you study men of God in the path. Like, this is what we're talking about. I love it, man. Heck yeah.
Yep.
Well, we got anything else? We kind of gotta.
Oh, you can talk for a couple hours, man. I mean,
yeah, man. It's time to. Well, we got to do another one, man. I had a bunch of questions I didn't even get into.
I'm sorry.
It was great. I couldn't stop you, man. You were just like boom, 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 boom. I was like, just let the man work, man. You were just in there, just getting it done. That's good stuff, man.
Well, it's the same for me. That's going on with you. It's like God is putting a little bit of pressure. It's like you don't know how long you have to do this, so you might want to get going, before it's too late. And so, I think it's good, man. And I'm really happy that you're doing what you're doing. I think it's going to be a game changer. I really just see a need. There's a lot of guys looking for answers in our industry.
Yes, sir.
And they're floundering, and we see them out there at the bars and different things like that, having a hard time. Not that anything's wrong with drinking, guys. I'm talking about the guys floundering. You know who they are. And they just need some of that in their life, and I think it's the right time for it now,
Yes.
So,
yeah.
I think God's calling us to do it, so.
Hey, it's an honor. It's an honor, Peter. No, it really is. It's such an honor. There's no better way to live, man. We're going to let them know. Well, God is good, man. And let everyone know just your book, the title again, where they can find it.
Yeah, it's Killing the Christian Persona, Finding Your True Identity in Christ. And then you can get it on Amazon. I honestly am never going to sign a book because that defeats the purpose of the book. And I'm not pushing it too hard, mostly because I know God has it and he's been pushing it for me, so I don't need to. But it is on Amazon. You can get it on Digits, and I'm recording the audiobook. So
good,
that'll be out there soon for those who don't know how to read in our industry, and I know there's a lot of you.
Oh man, good stuff, brother. Well, awesome. And then if people want to get a hold of you, a little bit about your business, just kind of what you guys do and where people can find you, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, it's Morton Executive Decisions, security consultancy. We do a lot of travel risk management, executive protection, most of which I farm out to people like Byron. And then also we've been doing a lot of mostly policy streamlining processes for big corporations when it comes to especially vetting security vendors and things like that. So it's a consultancy, and we'll take on anything. We also do a lot of volunteer pro bono nonprofit work with anti-trafficking, counter-trafficking, and then a lot of orphanages and things like that in some interesting places like Ukraine and Haiti. And, the fun stuff that keeps us feeling fulfilled in this world. So, yeah, you can find us at predictprotection.com.
Awesome. What was that website one more time?
Predictprotection.com.
Awesome. Sweet, y'all. The links are underneath, and blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Let's go. Boom.
Boom! Quick shout out to our sponsor, Staccato. My first pistol sponsor. I've been sponsored by a lot of companies, right, over the years. But when it comes to pistol, that's my bread and butter. Pistol is something I believe in. I'm a competitive shooter. We're shooting anywhere from, 800 rounds a month type of thing, right? So Staccato, being what I believe, is one of, if not the most complete handguns you can put in your hand. It's got every component that a handgun could have, should have. They're actually extremely dependable now that they've made some changes, and these things are straight up tack drivers. If you're looking for a pistol that will do as much of the work for you as a piece of hardware can, obviously you have to have the marksmanship and all the different things, but different guns perform at different levels. And I want to say that Staccato is one of, by far, for sure, take it from a competitive shooter, we're shooting the highest volumes of rounds constantly right now. Not used to have a background guy, but like right now, when you go shoot, you're going to see certain brands. Staccato is one of, if not the highest performing firearm that is both CCW, duty ready, and also competitive ready. So I want to give them a shout out. If you guys are looking for a good handgun to build your skills on top of, go check out Staccato. Much love and respect. Boom. When it comes to the technology you use to protect your home, there's nothing better than Deep Sentinel. AI-driven, human-monitored technology that will keep you and your family safe for the same price you're paying for whatever Ring doorbell system you have. Check out Deep Sentinel. It's such an honor to join forces with these guys. They should be in every single house in the world. Get real-time Overwatch for you and your loved ones. And for 10% off, depending on when you're watching this, don't forget to use code Byron at checkout.
Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God.